Oh, hello folks. So as you can see there, it's very wet, and we've got Biff the monkey outside there because he's overdue a clean, and he's going to get wet anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, got some bad weather at the moment, folks. So what better opportunity than to come out to the TWEX shed and do a bit of tinker time. So we've been in here, you know, sorting out the bikes and just giving things a bit of titivation in anticipation of better weather, folks. Yeah. Right, so let me say hello properly. Right then, so well, we've been dabbling a bit with radio recently, as you know. I mean, those of you who have watched the channel, you could probably tell that we've already got the CB radio set up. We've got a different one now. We've got a Thunderpole T800, which is set up in the rainy day mobile just for days like today, which is great. And obviously, you know, I mean, with the weather we've been having, it's been very, very difficult to actually, you know, get out all the time on the bike. And it's a sort of an inbuilt interest I've had for many years, and it kind of starts off really with childhood. And I think one of my earliest memories was going to see my granddad at weekends, and he had this big old-fashioned radio, and it was many different bands and functions on it. I mean, I can't remember, I was way too young. But one of the things that my granddad pointed out to me all those years ago as well was shortwave radio. Now obviously the shortwave band, not every radio has it, especially a lot of the modern ones. You have to get a specific radio that will have shortwave band on it. And now you do usually tend to find shortwave radios can be quite expensive, folks. Yeah, because it's old school technology, and I'm not an expert with radios, but I'm just tell you what I know. But shortwave is basically a very good old-fashioned form of communication. It was used as far back as about 100 years ago, and it was once the best form of long distance communication with radio waves, shortwave. And there are a few downsides as well, being shortwave is not always the easiest to tune into, and it's not always the most reliable. But we're not going to get too involved with the science, folks. And what I'm going to do in a minute, I'm going to show you my recent addition, which is the shortwave radio. And now I know, first of all, there's going to be loads of you that are experts with radio, whether you're ham radio or whether you're, you know, CB or whatever it is you are, and you know, you're all going to go out and say, whoa, you should have bought this, you should have had SSB and all this, like you should have got that one and you should have got that one. But at the end of the day, it boils down to cash, folks, and how much you've got. Now obviously I deliberately went for the cheapest and most cheerful shortwave radio I could get my hands on, and deliberately that is, and there's a very good reason for that, is because first of all I wanted to find out just how, you know, how easy it is to listen to shortwave radio. And what I'm going to do is pop you on the bench a moment, and I'm going to introduce you to the latest little purchase we've had off of eBay, and this comes in the form of this. Now it's a very, very cheap and cheerful little radio. It's a multi-band radio, and it's just literally a receiver, folks. It's not a transmitter or anything like that. It's a very, very cheap, basic multi-band radio. And the thing about shortwave radios is, with shortwave, it's actually possible you can listen to radio in other countries, folks. Other countries. And that's kind of like magical. I've always had that fascination, and there I was about 5 or 6 years old tuning the radio, and my grandfather telling me about what different stations we were listening to. And now I know in a lot of countries that people say, oh well, how do you know what, you know, they're all speaking a foreign language. Well, that isn't necessarily true, folks, because basically what we are doing is there are a lot of English speaking foreign radio stations, and we're going to get this thing out of the box in a moment, folks, and we're going to have a look and see what it's all about. Alright then folks, so first of all we're just going to have a quick look at the packaging and talk about a few basic things on the packaging. Now it does state first of all that it's a 9-band radio with TV sound receiver. Well, that is obviously out of date for this country, because that function, TV sound receiver, well, that's only going to work with analog televisions, folks, and I'm sure that you're more than aware that analog TV is a thing of the past. However, in some countries they're still using old school televisions, and you know, where the TV broadcast, it goes out over radio waves in an analog signal. But here in England that's not the case anymore, folks. But yeah, so it says you know, it says it will do AM and shortwave and FM. Obviously with the shortwave band, one of the things that interests me about this radio is it's basically got 7 bands of shortwave, which is quite interesting. And we're going to get it out the box, and as you can see there, the brand, well, I've never heard of that, and it's basically like everything these days, folks, it's made in China, and it's multilingo on the back, and the English bit is a bit broken and badly worded, as with a lot of things from the Chinese market. But they do try, and you know, they are making some better stuff, folks, all the time. So we're going to take it out the box, and first of all we find it's in the bubble wrap plastic, and we'll remove that, put that to one side. There we go. And I'm just going to pop the little radio down there. Now I have had it out of the box once, and it has batteries in it fitted, folks. I'll show you that in a moment, but we've got the basic little instruction manual here, and just basically tells you the basic things, and of course frequency ranges, and I'm not going to go into that because it's far too technical, folks. But very simple, and obviously I think they put differently printed out instruction manuals for different destinations of sale, because obviously we've got an all English instruction manual, and that's pretty good. Right, so what we're going to do then is we're going to have a look at the radio first of all. And with the radio, it's very basic. We've got a telescopic aerial, which will extend in a moment, and I'll just show you the battery compartment. So it's nice and simple, comes apart, and we've got 2 AA batteries in there, and that's basically what this little radio takes, is 2 AA batteries. So we're just going to pop that down a moment, and the first thing we're going to do is just unfold the aerial, which is quite tall. I guess it's about, well, I don't know, about 12 inches long. And on the top of the radio we have a function for the bands. We've got the AM band, which is right the way up the top there, and if you can see that, the AM band, that's in AM. And as we slide down to 1, that's the first band of shortwave, and it goes right the way down to shortwave 7, shortwave band 7. So we'll start at the bottom and work up anyway. Now obviously on the side here is a very cheap and cheerful little headphone jack socket there. There's also an external power input. I think it's about 3 volts, if that, folks, but I don't believe there's really much point in using an AC adapter in a radio like this, to be honest. But it does have the option, and of course as well we've got some other functions on the front here as well. We've got the tuning dial here. Now first experience with this little radio is it's actually quite awkward to tune in, and that's because of it's obviously a basic product. It's got a rather sharp angular little tuning knob, which is quite sharp, and it does, if you're gripping it hard, you have to tune into the stations very slowly and gradually. But it is actually it does work, folks. It's functional. We've got this little blue slide switch on the bottom which says local, so for FM radio, or what we call, you know, local radio, then it's on that function. But the other end of the spectrum, the slide switch, it says DX, and according to the instructions, if you're listening to shortwave radio or in another country, or you know, any radio signal that's transmitted over distance, the DX switch is what you want, because that makes the aerial more sensitive and you're able to actually receive the signal better, and that little function does actually work. We've also got the AM selector switch, which is also the AM and the shortwave selector switch, and it says FM TV. Well, we spoke about the TV function a moment ago, but obviously when we first turn it on,
we did see we were going back to front. We did.
So the first thing is the default function is basically FM. We're listening to some sort of sport at the moment. That's an English radio station, but if we push the AM function, according to what band we're on with the shortwave, now straight away we're listening to a foreign radio station, and we're on shortwave band 7. We've got the DX function there, and you can look at the radio, you can see the power is on there, which is obvious, and the AM shortwave LED is a light, and that basically signifies that we are listening to shortwave because we've selected band 7, and the switch at the top there is for AM. And what we'll do, we will see if we can tune this into something else and see what we can find, basically. I'm just going to turn the volume up a little bit. So we're working down through very, very slowly. I don't know if you can see that. Well, that's pretty good reception. See if we can find something English speaking. Now, I've already played with the radio. Don't know what that is. And I found that some of the lower shortwave bands are a bit better for listening to some of the English speaking radios. So what we'll do, we're on 7, so I'm going to slide it up to 6 and we'll try again.
Am anderen Ende der Skala ist Österreich mit 510 Kilogramm pro Kopf der größte Recycler von Siedlungsabfall. Der ukrainische Präsident Volodymyr Zelensky hat General Alexander Sirski zum Oberbefehlshaber der ukrainischen Streitkräfte ernannt und damit General Valery Zaluzhny ersetzt.
No.
Der Staatschef erklärte, es sei Zeit für einen Wechsel.
I think that's pretty incredible, really, folks, because
das waren die Meldungen.
Der Wochenspiegel.
Right, I recognise that, folks. We're listening to a German radio station.
Im deutschen Programm von Radio Rumänien International bringen wir zunächst wie jeden Samstag einen Rückblick.
So we're here in England listening to a Romanian radio station. Now we're going to try and find something English speaking. So it is quite interesting, folks. We can actually listen to foreign radio stations on the shortwave band. Now I'm going to go up a band. I'm going to go up to shortwave band 5 and see what we can receive. Now that sounds a bit weird. And the other day I was actually listening to a Chinese radio station, believe it or not. So that was on band 4. And a Russian station the other day, I was listening to some Russian radio, and there was actually a few English voices on there. Not sure what nationality that is.
Tenemos ya los 22 protagonistas preparados aquí con un 4-4-2 por parte de Antonio Hidalgo.
Yeah, listening to all kinds of Asian stations, all from that part of the world. I recognise some of the language. And some Chinese.
Del Colegio Vasco desde las 4:15, evidente, a las 6:30. Es curioso, ¿eh? La Liga no
sounds like Spanish to me.
Contra el segundo, pues a las 6:30.
I think we're going to go up a band onto 3. Now I must say that the reception on this little radio is actually pretty good. If I go back a distance, I can just show you how tall the aerial is there. It's not the biggest aerial, but it's not particularly difficult to actually tune into some stations, and considering we're listening to shortwave radio, I'd say the reception is pretty good. I just need to try and find an English-speaking station. Bundesliga, that's Germany.
El líder, el Leverkusen de Xabi Alonso, recibe al segundo clasificado, que es el Bayern de Múnich. So, particularly for those who are coming from what is known as the Western world, the Anglophone world, or different types of
Right.
our background on China is a lot different than many countries in the world.
Well, you travel a lot to go and judge speaking competitions around China, is that right? And what does this entail?
So we have a Chinese English-speaking radio station.
I didn't know there were 31 provinces.
Yeah, there's a few more I haven't been to. And I've been some many times. And I've gone to judge speaking competitions. I've given lectures at 70 universities all over China. Silence again many times.
So that's quite an incredible little thing to be able to listen to shortwave radio, and of course, you know, in another country.
Some of my travels is related to that. I've been invited on a few government trips.
No, I wasn't expecting a lot from this little radio, folks, because it is basically a very cheaply sourced radio, and the quality of it was an unknown thing, and it was a bit of a gamble with it. But to be quite honest, I'm actually very impressed with it, considering how cheap it was as well. The radio actually cost, it was less than £10, folks, including its delivery. So I'm going to switch it off there a moment then. So, quite interesting then. We've actually managed to listened to a few foreign radio stations, and the reception is very surprising actually, folks, because it's a cheap radio. Now I think what makes a bit of a difference with these modern radios is basically, although it's a manual tuning radio, it's actually a digital radio. It's got a digital signal processor in it, unlike some of the older radios, and that is basically what helps it a bit to actually receive some of these foreign stations from that distance. And definitely the radio that my grandfather had many years ago, I think that actually had valves in it, folks. That actually had a very old school valve radio in it. This has actually got, I think it's got a few little microchips in it and bits and pieces, folks. But as I said, it's very inexpensive. And now one of the things about shortwave radio is basically, it's been in use for a very long time, folks, and I don't really believe that it's in danger of going away anytime soon. And as you can just hear from a few minutes just tuning through the bands there, then basically there is quite a lot going on, folks, on shortwave radio. And a lot of the other countries and in Asia and India and are using shortwave radio, and there's still a lot going on shortwave radio. And I'm not sure, but I think there used to be a station called the British Home Service, which used to transmit on shortwave radio, and that was partly to be able to be received in other places far away from the UK. But for a cheap little radio, I'd actually say it's pretty good, folks. And now one of the things that's intriguing with this little radio as well is with this kind of shortwave radio, you might be asking yourselves, well, why has he bothered to buy something like this? Well, basically it all comes down to finding out what's going on in other parts of the world, folks. And we've got our own news service here in England, but it is quite interesting to actually tune into Chinese television or Chinese radio station, sorry, and actually listen to their news in broadcast in English, and the similar in other countries as well. The other day I was listening to a radio station in Germany that was broadcasting in English, and it is a very interesting thing to be able to do, folks. And of course, with all the ever increasing problems in the world these days, then it's actually something that's a handy thing to have, folks. And I think it's only fair really that we should explore the other functions of the radio before we sign off for the afternoon. So we've basically got the FM station, which is pretty good. I mean, when you switch it on, it goes to FM radio by default.
Like you were at the factory, Dad.
Yeah, so here we've got a native radio station.
Brave looks for Brave, and he's been, well, he thought he was brought down.
And we've got the football, and of course, should have that to local really.
Pierce Roche looking to get on with this one.
And the DX, so we've got
high down the middle.
Some form of sports radio there, and if we go to the AM band, then AM is basically still broadcast in this country, folks.
What time is the race on then?
So I would say then that listening to that, that is, I think that's Radio 5 Live. I think that's on AM. It covers sports and national sporting events and all kinds of other stuff, if anybody's wondering. And it sounds like they're listening to a football match at the moment. And yeah, so what can I say really, for a very cheap price radio with these extra little functions, folks, it's I'm very pleased with it, to be honest. And it's just something that's an itch I've had to scratch for many years. And I remember, like I said, all those years ago, listening to foreign radio stations with my granddad, and on the shortwave band. And of course, I think shortwave is also there are a lot of people speaking on shortwave on amateur radio, because shortwave was actually once, or I think maybe still, used by the military as a form of communication. I know that a lot of the 1950s army radios were using shortwave, and going back further than that, back to World War II, then obviously that was shortwave was a major form of communication. And it's just nice to have a look at these options anyway. And you know, now, like I said, at the moment we are kind of stuck with the weather, and there's not an awful lot going on. Now, I know that our video with us looking at some of the abandoned and closed roads up on the A30, that was a brilliant experience, folks, and I'm so pleased that it's been well received, folks. We also did get out last weekend with Kerno EXP, and we were, you know, out and about looking at an abandoned property in the darkness, and I still haven't reviewed that footage yet. Now, I've only got limited footage of that, folks, but hopefully we'll get that to you in the near future. But I'd just like to say a massive thank you anyway to all of any new subscribers that have come along to TWEX, and we're hoping to get out on the road, folks, soon. So until the next time, we will see you soon.